Hello, seekers of knowledge. Wherever you are in the world, I would like to welcome you to a new episode of Your Pocket DPO, a bi weekly privacy podcast with your host, Alexandra Stanford. Today, May 25th, 2024, is the 6th anniversary of the GDPR. So, happy birthday, GDPR! It is still the highest standard in the world for protecting the privacy and data of EU data subjects. If you're new to the show, this podcast is your one-stop center for everything data protection related. I present all of the latest news and issues in the privacy field, interview various privacy professionals about their opinions and contributions in privacy and data protection, read privacy policies, break it down and present it to you, and have trivia questions that will leave you thinking. What is definitely on every privacy professional's mind right now, including mine, is artificial intelligence. The EU Council formally adopted the AI Act at the ministerial level on the 21st of May 2024. This means that the publication of the law in the EU's official journal will happen in late May or early June, and the subsequent entry into force 20 days later will be towards the end of June. However, this hasn't stopped the innovation of AI models. Let's get into it. So on May 13th, 2024, ChatGPT 4.0 started to be rolled out, and its capabilities are definitely a historic moment in the development of a virtual assistant. It accepts any combination of text, audio, image, and video, and generates any combination of text, audio, and image outputs. It can respond to audio inputs in as little as 232 milliseconds with an average of 320 milliseconds, which is similar to human response times, which opens a new window in conversation. AI web scraping, the collection of training data, pre-processing of the data, and training are one of the reasons why ChatGPT is able to function as well as it is. However, the EU national data protection authorities have several concerns over this practice. One common issue is the hallucination problem, in other words, data accuracy. The GDPR has 7 guiding principles. The first, the accountability principle, states that the controller, in this case OpenAI, shall be responsible and be able to demonstrate compliance with all of the below principles. Personal data shall be 1. Processed lawfully, fairly, and in a transparent manner in relation to the data subject. 2. Personal data shall be collected for specified, explicit, and legitimate purposes and not further processed in a manner that is incompatible with these purposes. Further processing for archiving purposes in the public interest, scientific or historical purposes, or statistical purposes shall not be considered to be incompatible with the initial purposes. 3. Personal data shall be adequate, relevant, and limited to what is necessary in relation to the purposes for which they are processed. 4. Personal data shall be accurate and, where necessary, kept up to date. Every reasonable step must be taken to ensure that personal data that are inaccurate are erased or rectified without delay. 5. Personal data shall be kept in a form which permits identification of data subjects for no longer than is necessary for the purposes for which the personal data are processed. Personal data may be stored for longer periods insofar as the personal data shall be processed solely for archiving purposes in the public interest, scientific or historical purposes, or statistical purposes in accordance with Article 89(1), subject to the implementation of the appropriate technical and organizational measures required by the GDPR in order to safeguard the rights and freedoms of the data subject. And 6, personal data shall be processed in a manner that ensures appropriate security of personal data, including protection against unauthorized or unlawful processing and against accidental loss, destruction, or damage using appropriate technical or organizational measures. The European Data Protection Board, in a report on the work undertaken by the ChatGPT Task Force on Web Scraping by ChatGPT, stated that the probabilistic nature of the system, the current training approach, leaves the AI producing biased or made up outputs, which can be taken as factually accurate by end users, including information relating to individuals regardless of their actual accuracy. The report advises that controllers such as OpenAI must ensure users understand the probabilistic nature of language learning model generative text, including potential biases or inaccuracies. Furthermore, in the report, the EDPB recognizes that OpenAI relies on legitimate interest to collect and process personal data to train ChatGPT. The report further states that for it to rely on legitimate interest, the legal assessment of Article 61F GDPR should be based on the following criteria. 1. The existence of a legitimate interest. 2. Necessity of processing, as the personal data should be adequate, relevant, and limited to what is necessary in relation to the purposes for which they are processed. And 3. Balancing of interest. This criteria together is the legitimate interest assessment or test that must be done by data controllers such as OpenAI. The report goes on to further say that according to Article 9, Working Party, appropriate safeguards play a special role in reducing undue impact on data subjects and can therefore change the balancing test in favor of the controller. While the assessment of the lawfulness is still subject to the pending investigations, such safeguards could be technical measures defining precise collection criteria and ensuring that certain data categories are not collected or that certain sources, such as public social media profiles, are excluded from data collection. Furthermore, measures could be put in place to delete or anonymize personal data that has been collected via web scraping before the training stage. So, in other words, using legitimate interest as a legal basis for collecting personal data is possible if technical measures are used as described above. However, if OpenAI is relying on legitimate interest, transparency obligations must be respected. Article 14.5b of the GDPR says that in cases where it is not possible to notify data subjects of the information being processed, such as in the context of web scraping, the controller shall take appropriate measures to protect the data subject's rights and freedoms and legitimate interests, including making the information publicly available. But ChatGPT's data is not publicly available. Unlike a search engine, the data subject cannot exercise simple data subject rights, for example, the right to be forgotten. OpenAI is not anonymizing personal data as a system still outputs information about people. And while all of this is happening, it is closing various licensing deals with websites such as Reddit and other platforms that contain personal data. Obviously, they are not avoiding personal data and do not plan to do so. So, in conclusion, legitimate interest might be totally distorted here. Either the EPB states that legitimate interest works differently for OpenAI and other AI companies relying on web scraping to train AI, or they require them to comply with legitimate interest according to GDPR. The final say on this rests with the EDPB. Another item on OpenAI plate regarding compliance with the GDPR is the issue with Sky. Scarlett Johansson confronted OpenAI regarding the use of a ChatGPT voice that users and the actress herself found eerily reminiscent of her own. Sky, a voice model used by OpenAI, which pointed out bore a striking resemblance to Johansson's voice, particularly reminiscent of her role in the sci fi film Her. Scarlett Johansson revealed that OpenAI's CEO, Sam Altman, had previously approached her to lend her voice to the AI system, a proposal she declined. The actress expressed shock and disbelief when she discovered that the Sky voice closely mimicked hers, leading her to hire a legal counsel to address the issue. This action resulted in OpenAI pausing the use of the Sky voice, emphasizing that while they strive for realism in the AI voices, they do not intend to mimic specific celebrities without consent. OpenAI clarified that the voice in question was provided by another professional actress and was not intended to replicate Johansson's distinctive sound. This incident had sparked broader discussions about the ethical boundaries in AI development, particularly concerning the use of celebrity likeness without explicit permission. The situation highlights the delicate balance tech companies must maintain between innovation and respecting individuals' privacy and rights. Now, let's take a look at OpenAI's privacy policy regarding its data processing practices when you use its websites, applications, and services. ChatGPT has two privacy policies, one for its users that reside in the European Economic Area, Switzerland, or UK, and another for users that do not reside in this area. The privacy policy does not apply to content that OpenAI processes on behalf of customers of its business offerings, such as its API. The use of that data is governed by its customer agreements covering access to and use of those offerings. For information about how OpenAI collects and uses training information to develop its language learning models that power ChatGPT and other services and your choices with respect to that information is on a different website, but I will summarize the most important points here. OpenAI's large language models, including the models that power ChatGPT, are developed using three primary sources of information. One, information that is publicly available on the internet. Two, information that OpenAI licenses from third parties. And three, information that its users or its human trainers provide. OpenAI only uses publicly available information that is freely and openly available on the internet. For example, OpenAI does not seek information behind paywalls or from the dark web. OpenAI applies filters and removes information that it does not want its models to learn from or output, such as hate speech, adult content, sites that primarily aggregate personal information, and spam. OpenAI then uses the information to teach its models. Machine learning models are made up of large strings of numbers called weights or parameters, and code that interprets and executes those numbers. Models do not contain or store copies of information that they learn from. Instead, as a model learns, some of the numbers that make up the model changes slightly to reflect what it has learned. In other words, ChatGPT does not copy or store training information in a database. Instead, it learns about associations between words, and those learnings help the model update its numbers or weights. The model then uses the weights to predict and generate new words in response to a user's request. ChatGPT does not copy and paste training information. Much like a person who has read a book and set it down, OpenAI's models does not have access to training information after they have learned it. A large amount of data on the internet relates to people, so OpenAI's training information does accidentally include personal information. OpenAI does not actively seek out personal information to train its models. OpenAI uses training information only to help its models learn about language and how to understand and respond to it. OpenAI does not and will not use any personal information in training information to build profiles about people, to contact them, to advertise to them, to sell them anything, or to sell the information itself. OpenAI's models may learn from personal information to understand how things like names and addresses fit within language and sentences, or to learn about famous people and figures. This makes our models better at providing relevant responses. OpenAI also takes steps to reduce the processing of personal data when training its models. For example, OpenAI removes websites that aggregate large volumes of personal information, and it tries to train its models to reject requests for private or sensitive information about people. So, why is OpenAI invading your privacy and processing your data if not for training ChatGPT? OpenAI may use personal data for the following purposes: to provide and maintain its services, to improve and develop its services and new features and conduct research, to communicate with you, including to send you information or marketing about its services and events, to prevent fraud, criminal activity, or misuses of its services, to protect the security of its systems and services, and to comply with legal obligations and to protect the rights, privacy, safety, or property of its users, OpenAI, its affiliates, and any third parties. OpenAI aggregate or de-identify personal data so that it is no longer able to identify you and uses information to analyze the effectiveness of its services, to improve and add features to its services, to conduct research, and for other similar purposes. In addition, from time to time, OpenAI may share or publish aggregated information like general user statistics with third parties. OpenAI collects this information through the services, through cookies, and through other means described in this privacy policy. OpenAI will maintain and use de-identified information in anonymous or de-identified form, and OpenAI will not attempt to re-identify the information unless required by law. OpenAI uses content you provide to improve its services, for example, to train the models that power its services. Who gave OpenAI permission to process your personal information? OpenAI processes your data firstly on the basis of a contract to provide and maintain its services and to communicate with you, including to send you information or marketing about its services and events. Secondly, to comply with legal obligations, so to prevent fraud, criminal activity, or misuses of its services, and to protect the security of its systems and services, and to comply with legal obligations and to protect the rights, privacy, safety, or property of its users, OpenAI, its affiliate, or any third party. And finally, on the basis of its legitimate interest to improve and develop its services and new features and to conduct research. You can find more details in the EU EA privacy policy under the heading Legal Basis for Processing. What data is OpenAI collecting? OpenAI collects personal data that you provide, such as account information, user content, communication information, social media information, and other information you provide when you participate in events or surveys or provide OpenAI with information to establish your age or identity. OpenAI also collects personal data it receives automatically from you when you use the services such as log data, usage data, device information, cookies, and similar technologies. And finally, OpenAI collects personal data it receives from other sources, like information that is publicly available on the internet, in particular to develop the models that power its services. OpenAI also receives information from its trusted partners, such as security partners, to protect against fraud, abuse, or other security threats to its services or marketing vendors who provide OpenAI with information about potential customers of its business services. How long will OpenAI hold on to this information? Personal data will be held onto for as long as needed in order to provide OpenAI's service to you, or for any other legitimate business purposes such as resolving disputes, safety and security reasons, or complying with its legal obligations. Factors considered when retaining personal data are purpose for processing the data, the amount of data, nature, and sensitivity of the data, the potential risk or harm for unauthorized use or disclosure of the data, and any legal requirement that OpenAI is subject to. In some cases, the length of time OpenAI retains data depends on your settings. More information can be found in the EU EEA privacy policy under the heading Retention. Who is OpenAI sharing your data with? In certain circumstances, OpenAI may disclose your personal data to vendors and service providers, during business transfers, to government authorities or other third parties, affiliates, business account administrators, and other users and third parties you share the information with. More information on this can be found in the EU EEA privacy policy under the heading Disclosure of Personal Data. Where is your data being sent to outside of the European Union? OpenAI will transfer your personal data to recipients outside of the EEA, Switzerland, and the UK for the purposes described in this privacy policy. If you are based in the EEA, Switzerland, or the UK and your personal data is transferred to a third country, the third country may not offer the same level of data protection as your home country. However, OpenAI transfers personal data pursuant to applicable data protection laws. To transfer your data outside of the EEA, Switzerland, or the UK, OpenAI relies on the European Commission's adequacy decisions on certain countries, and for other jurisdictions, OpenAI relies on the standard contractual clauses as approved by the European Commission. By using OpenAI services, you understand and acknowledge that your personal data will be processed and stored in its affiliates and servers in the United States and may be disclosed to its service providers and affiliates in other jurisdictions. More information can be obtained by contacting OpenAI at privacy@openai.com. And the final part of OpenAI's privacy policy is the list of your rights, which can be found under the heading Your Rights. And there is a description on how to exercise your rights. As I near the end of my podcast, it is time to present the trivia question of the week. For the 6th anniversary of the GDPR, the Irish Data Protection Commission is highlighting its work in the area of children's data protection rights in a podcast which can be found on its website. And in the spirit of this work to protect the children, here is my trivia question. True or false? Can personal data about children be collected? Think about it, do some research, and let me know in the comments and the poll what your answer could be. And I will share the answer with you in the next episode. Thank you again for sharing your time with me today and gaining some data protection knowledge. And wherever you are in the world, I bid you good day, good evening, and good night. Until next time, bye.